welcome back to PPCM's Painful Truth. Today's guest, Katherine Gosling.
Hi, Katherine. How you doing?
Oh, good.
Hi. Thank you so much for your time today with your magic minute of sharing your peripartum cardiomyopathy experience. First, when I read your little description of what happened to you, I definitely could relate, as well as all the fears and everything with my experience. So I'm thankful that you're here, able to talk to me and to share your experience. May I ask, how old were you when you were diagnosed with peripartum cardiomyopathy, PPCM?
36.
36?
Yeah.
And were you diagnosed during, or how were you diagnosed throughout your pregnancy or after? At what point were you diagnosed?
So it was the day my daughter was born. During labour, when I was having contractions, my oxygen levels were dropping. So at first they thought I had sepsis, and then I ended up in like an induced coma, and then they did an echocardiogram, and then that's when it showed up that later on that day that it was heart failure, peripartum cardiomyopathy.
And who was it that died? And where did this take place? At what hospital and what part of the world?
I was in Burnley in England. I was in the birthing centre at Burnley Hospital, and then they had to, after this, they did an emergency C-section, and then they transferred me to a different hospital with an intensive care unit. And it was in intensive care in there where I spoke to a cardiologist later that day.
And at how many weeks pregnant, I guess, were you when you first were feeling like, something's just not right? My body is
about 36 weeks.
36
maybe 38 weeks. I was struggling lying down flat. Couldn't breathe. Walking on a flat surface, just a couple of steps, I'd be out of breath and gasping for breath.
Yeah, I remember that.
I remember talking to my husband and saying, there's no way I'm going to be able to give birth. I haven't got the energy to even just go to sleep, let alone deliver a baby safely. And I was convinced I was going to die during childbirth before.
Yeah, when I read that, you said, I said to my husband, how can I deliver a baby? I feel like I'm dying. And I can relate to that so much because I've actually said those words as well at some point before, my cardiac arrests. But when, at that point, you knew that there was something wrong. Was it that your doctors weren't providing the right screening labs and testings? Was it because you weren't diagnosed, that you were not treated? Or at what point were you treated? And
it wasn't until after I gave birth.
To your life was
to be honest, I spoke to a midwife about it, but she just put it down to it's just part of pregnancy. And I'd never had a baby before. I'd never been pregnant, so I didn't have anything to relate it to.
Compare it to.
So I just assumed, this must just be how it is. It's only afterwards, and I was in intensive care, and they kept talking about this peripartum cardiomyopathy. I was like, what is this? And I remember the doctor kept mentioning it, and he mentioned it to a student doctor, sorry. So I got my phone out and I typed it in because I kept forgetting what they were saying. And I was like, what's it called? What's it called? And then when I looked at the symptoms online, everything was there. It was just everything. I ticked every box.
Yeah, it's textbook at this point. You know, it's maternal mortality, you know, has been existing as long as we've been existing. And so, what I've been saying is that, you know, this should be an ancient conversation, but we are having it for like the first time of having the awareness, and now knowing that there's a prevention, and that it only took a doctor to be educated on peripartum cardiomyopathy, which, you know, I believe is the lack of, you know, common sense that when a woman gives birth, that there is a potential that the pregnancy fluid could crush a woman's heart. And so, you know, people believe that it can never happen to them because they're so healthy and young and first pregnancy and all. And it's the heart that is affected. So it's not really a heart issue, but the heart is affected by the fluid, untreated suffocation and it hurts.
Yeah, it does.
As we know. So,
yeah, it really does.
You know, I think that is at this point, how old is your baby today?
She's
your PPCM
3
baby?
tomorrow. She turns 3.
She's 3 tomorrow. And how, like, through the trauma of, you know, just getting through the recovery and all of this, how is this affecting, you know, the family in a sense where obviously you have follow-ups and things?
Yeah. I mean, initially, after she was born, we were in separate hospitals for the first week and a half. So that was tough.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry. No, I know the feeling. I do.
But now we're inseparable now. But there was a lot of concern. I mean, we'd gone through IVF and we had a lot to get to that stage. And we have a strong family unit. But I think I can imagine it'd crush some people. Yeah, we were lucky and the doctors were amazing. And my mum and dad were going over seeing her every day. So, but it was hard. And it was hard on my husband. He was told, basically, they thought I was going to die because they didn't know what was happening.
Right.
But it was hard, especially when my daughter Maria was discharged. He brought her home and was looking after her and doing everything himself. But yeah, now we're okay. We're good now.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's like whiplash. It's like as if, you know, you're giving life, and how could you like give life and feel like you're not gonna like live? And it's very terrifying. You know, for me, like I couldn't cope with just knowing, having that awareness of like where to meet myself at the level of my depression through coping with everything and the trauma and the fear. I believe in mental health, and there's nothing wrong with it because it's like just as important as the heart. And there definitely needs to be a balance with this trauma that we go through. I mean, not enough, there'll be never enough time that's going to make this okay. And when you go through something like this, and, you know, we have, I don't know about you, but I have a lot of, you know, even though you didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. It was our doctors in the medical community that didn't have enough information over their however many years and degrees, or maybe the one-liner because they think it's rare when really it's global. I mean, you're in England. I'm in California. I have women all over the world that are experiencing peripartum cardiomyopathy, PPCM. And when they tell their friends or doctors or families, they say, "What's that?"
Yeah.
And
I spoke to my midwife after.
Sure.
And she didn't know what it was. I had to explain it to her.
And that's all we can. That's what we can do.
To my general practitioner. That there's so many people just don't know what it is.
And it's not just. It's here in the United States of America. It's every state, and they say, "Oh, they just don't listen." And I don't know. It's not about listening. It's like, okay, if they're not going to listen, then they have to give the mandatory diagnosis of the NT-proBNP test, which is the only test for early diagnosis. So if they're not going to listen, then they have to give the test. But once they're aware of this information, it's how they apply it. And if they don't, it's just careless. And I feel like how are you, like after like 3 years, I mean, how are you sleeping? How are you coping? How are your coping mechanisms for your grieving?
I think that there's so many different levels to it. In terms of health-wise, I can be fine one day, but the next I'll be struggling walking upstairs, and then still feel like now I've got a brilliant cardiologist, but I do feel like he dismisses me sometimes when I speak to him. I don't know.
Like you're not
I
being
think
listened
the
to.
mental side of it is the worst, because I always thought I'll live till I'm 70. Something might happen along the way, but everyone generally lives till 70, 80. Now I think about it all the time. I think about what would happen to Maria if I wasn't here, and nothing. You just can't take anything for granted. You just don't know what's around the corner.
Exactly.
My mum said after,
Your
my
mum
mum
said,
said I didn't think people still died in childbirth. We're in the 21st century. I didn't think it was possible, but they do, and I didn't know.
It's really kind of disturbing that, and I was just saying this, I watch all on Netflix, all the queens and the royalty TV series,
Oh, The Crown. Yeah.
And there's always, they call them in the series childbirth fever. And this was going back from the Medici family before the 1800s to, basically up to like King Henry, the 7th and the 8th, and King Henry, I think it was King Henry, actually, I think it was his brother whose wife died of childbirth fever. But there's always a woman in these series that dies after giving childbirth. And now we know that it's not childbirth fever. It's called peripartum cardiomyopathy, PPCM. And it's a pregnancy-induced complication. So the fact that a young, healthy woman thinks that maternal mortality can't happen to them, it's common. So the fact that we're having this conversation and it's basically as if we were in the 1800s. trying to figure this out as survivors, trying to educate the medical community, but they have to stick with protocol. Well, okay, then get the test mandatory. The real tests that Dr. James Fett with the IPAC Research Lab, he talks about, which I mentioned, the SFLT1, which stands for SFL, stands for cardiotoxic, and 1 stands for genetic, and then the PIGF stands for placental growth factor. The 2 cardiac fluid, as well as the growth of the placenta, is a determination and diagnosis for treatment. But it's called an instrument and kit, but it's not FDA approved in the United States of America. However, it is approved in England. So you might want to call, you know, if you ever get pregnant again. I don't know if you're planning on to, you're like, no, but it's always good to know, because you do have it available, which is amazing. United States of America does not have it available.
So is that once you're pregnant at a certain stage, they can do that test?
You know what? I'd ask, because I don't even, it's not approved here. So they're not giving like too much information.
Yeah.
I try to, I did receive information on the study. So I think that it's actually, it may determine the placenta growth, but I think after you deliver, I think it's kind of like it's a during pregnancy screening. Yeah. And the Bnp test is always included with the pregnancy test, as should be part as a standard, which it isn't, which is why you were never diagnosed until your life was at a threat.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah. And it probably costs nothing.
No, it's actually, it's $100 in America. It's $100 out of pocket, and insurance covers it.
Yeah.
So why not? And I'd have to say, like, what you mentioned about the mental being the most challenging, it really is. It's an endless coping, conditioning, from a very dramatic experience. And
definitely.
And do you do any meditation out there?
No, not really. No.
What, yoga, stretching?
No. Just walking, really. Just walking outside and fresh air. Yeah.
Well, I think that definitely getting the heart rate up and keeping, moving for our heart and our mind, body, spirit is definitely one. And nourishing. And so what was your EF percent? Do you know by chance?
23. It was on diagnosis. 23%.
And what is it today?
It went up to 48, but then it's come down to 44. So it's and did you obviously you said the diagnosis was different than the doctor that delivered you? Yeah.
And have you gone back to the doctor yet and said to them?
Yeah. I went to be fair, the delivery, they were so quick. As soon as they realised something was wrong, they just went straight in, delivered Maria, and took me out. I can't fault the delivery team at all. They were really on the ball, and I do think had I gone, because there was the option of going to a different birthing centre where it was just midwives, and I do think it'd have been a different outcome if I hadn't have been there. I'm convinced. But I did have a debrief with the chief executive at the hospital at the trust, and they went into all the details, and they said they could pinpoint on my notes at what point my heart had gone into failure because of the oxygen, and I do think they were amazing.
So, did you? Yeah, but the birth, I guess the appointments during pregnancy when you have you spoken to that person that was monitoring you through your pregnancy?
Yeah, I have spoken to one of them. Yeah, and she didn't. She just didn't. She said she'd never heard of it. I had to explain it to her.
Yeah. When you explained it to her, how did she take the information?
She was just surprised, really.
She was surprised?
Yeah, and I said the symptoms. I explained what the symptoms were and how the heart was affected, and the heart was enlarged, and the fluid couldn't pump around, and I was drowning. And she was just surprised. She said she'd never heard of it. And I think for a midwife, I understand people forget things, but for a midwife to have never heard about a condition that only affects pregnant women.
It's so common. So common for midwives. I think they call themselves now birth keepers. They, for whatever reason, and I will never forget, and I'll always bring it up, but I posted on Facebook, and I keep making making it private for only me to see, and then I put it public, depending on how I feel that day, because I'm so torn that the type of responses that I've gotten from birthing professionals, pregnancy specialists that are actually even currently pregnant with a pregnancy-induced complication, clearly when fluid is not just in your feet, you can see the fluid going up the knee. They say that they are not interested in being informed. They call me spam. They say that I, am scaring them, and they don't take the life-saving educational information, not just for themselves, but for their babies and for their families that would be affected. They don't internalize as willing to want to be educated and learned and about the preventions for maternal mortality. Instead, they internalize it as not joyful. She was standing on a rock in front of the beautiful ocean, and her feet, her feet were so swollen, her ankles were so swollen, and it just was going up her knee. And I was like, I can't not say anything.
No.
I mean, I'm a healthy girl, and I still have my times of death called, and you're a birthing professional. And the feedback, and I have on Facebook, I have like thousands of Facebook friends-ish, but a lot of them are birthing professionals. And I added them on to educate them. And they only pop in and say anything when I stick it to them. But then when I indicate a woman who dies after giving birth and the article, crickets. They're so quick to
defend
each other, but they also are competitive with each other. It's a very interesting world that I have been observing for over 5 years when it comes to the wheelhouse of both holistic birthing, midwife, doula, pregnancy specialists, to OBGYNs, to the medical community, to the nurses. No one has awareness. No. And if they gain it, one ear and out the other, which is why it needs to be mandatory.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like when I was first diagnosed, everyone from the hospital came to see me. It was like it was like pointing at not the freak, but, like, oh, we can learn from this. And then since then, nothing. It's like the initial excitement and then it's gone.
Do you think COVID had anything to do with that?
Maybe it's that timing potentially.
Because, yeah, yours was February 2019, correct?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, January and February, yeah.
January, February 2019. And, COVID hit around 2020.
About a year later. Yeah.
So it drifted and faded because it was no longer a heightened death prevention, life-saving as important, which is what I've been getting a lot of feedback. Like since COVID, there's just even been less, even though there was barely less attention prior, which is why we're talking today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And bringing this to light, that it's not just the United States of America, that it is in fact you're in England.
Yeah. It's everywhere, it seems. Everywhere. Well, it will be. Where there's children being born, it's going to be happening.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like this will definitely get out, and we are showing up as women in 2022 to say that, peripartum cardiomyopathy, deaths of the preventions for maternal mortality does exist, and that we have lived to be the voices that we don't want this to happen to another woman, another girl.
Definitely not.
Not for our children and not for our children's children if we can prevent it.
Definitely.
So, thank you for today. Is there anything that you would like to share that could maybe inform or help somebody who's watching today?
If you have concerns, if you have swelling on your ankles, if you can't lie down flat, if you can't breathe walking across a room, then tell someone and tell them that it's peripartum cardiomyopathy. That's what you think it might be.
And advocate.
And get checked.
Self-advocate.
Yeah, definitely. I think I was naive and I probably just didn't look into it enough. But your own body, and if something's wrong, then check.
Exactly. If something feels off and wrong, it means that it is. And I think we also put a lot of our faith in our doctors or our birthing professional to say, this is a complication that needs some more attentive treatment or some sort of medical care assistance farther than my
and they don't have all the answers because a lot of them don't know about it
because they don't have the blood test available, or they're not aware of the blood test, and then women don't know to ask for the test. So if the women don't ask for it and they don't give it, then how is there ever going to be change?
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, it's now a matter of us stepping forward and saying, we're two women from literally across the world, and saying that, we've experienced a very hardship experience, definitely not joyful, pregnancy. And I feel like this is my first, and I'm not going to have any more. I don't want to.
I mean, I would love to, but there's that risk, and I couldn't leave my daughter now. And I feel like it'd be selfish for me to push it and then push it too far.
And that's exactly how I feel. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I struggled so much at the start, but time's gone on, and it's for me personally, I totally respect people who do go on, and I think it's fantastic. But for me, the risk is too much. she needs a mum, and I don't want to risk her not having a mum.
I know. And that's exactly how my boo-boo, like my little Liam, I mean, you know, I'm his mama, and I just would never do anything to put my life at risk to him possibly not having me. And
Yeah.
and I'm like you know, I would have loved to have had, you know, maybe one more, you know, whether I chose to or not. Again, it's like I had to, like, you know, get over the reality of my reality that whether I wanted to or not, it's just not in the cards for me.
No.
And
It's like a grieving process. You grieve for the children that you've not had.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But very well, you know, like stated, because I felt that. I definitely felt that. You know, I always thought I was going to have like a little girl, and I love having a little boy because I always wanted a little boy too. And I probably would have said if I had a little girl, I wanted a little boy, you know, because it's like, you know, but the grass is always greener on the other side. But at the same time, yeah, absolutely, I did grieve. I think that's, I didn't really think of it like that, but it's definitely.
Yeah, it's tough. But I think once you've made the decision and you're happy with it, we've got 2 frozen embryos because we did IVF, and it's coming to the time now we're going to have to let them go, but we just keep delaying it a little bit, hoping. But I think we've made our mind up now.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I had to go through that, and now I don't even think about it.
No.
I don't care. And I'm like, I hear people that have like 5 or 6 kids, I'm like, how do you do it?
Yeah, definitely.
You know? We just give all our love to the one, you know?
Yeah, that's it. Absolutely. The little miracles, little blessings. So, yeah.
Well, maybe one day our PPCM babies will meet. Mine's 5, yours is 3. So if you're ever in America and you come to California,
if you ever come to sunny England.
Well, I have a special place in my heart for England. So my father, his name is, he passed away 2019 actually. But he was appointed the grandfather of our economy in 1987 on the London Bridge. And so, yeah, and it was, I remember like when my dad would take me to England, we'd always go to a Broadway play, or, you know, I've been to Bath and the Cobblestone Street where I did the Brailles, and, you know, I loved it. You know, I loved being there, and it was very educational, just being on that side, very multicultural, beautiful, love the rain.
A lot of rain.
Yeah, I love when it rains here. It's very rare because it's California, but when it does, it's magical. But yeah, so I do. I love England and London, and I know that they're like not too close. They're like probably how New York is to Philadelphia, right? Like an hour and a half away.
Yeah, roughly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember that. Well, it was so lovely meeting you, and
you too.
I look forward to watching your PPCM baby grow throughout the years on Facebook, and hopefully you will keep in touch. And if we missed anything that you would like to touch upon, or any follow-ups, or anything that happens in the future, if you go, you know, however your journey is, and you need the fund, the PPCM fund, or you would like to add something, just feel free to contact me, and we can do a follow-up interview if something should happen. Yeah, brilliant. Lovely. Yeah. Oh, thanks for speaking to me. Thank you. And just out of curiosity, you were provided the Bnp test, correct?
No.
Are you familiar with the BNP test?
I've heard of it on the group since, but I don't really know anything about it.
Okay, so basically, now that you have experienced PPCM, it's really good for you to know your number. So really anything, if you get your NT-Pro BNP, you really want to be under 300. If it's the regular BNP, it's any number below 99. Those numbers indicate the blood vessels that are, surrounding your heart. But if the numbers, if it's elevated, it could also indicate other early diagnosis, because really what it is, it's blood. We all have blood, and we had trauma. And with trauma, things happen, things exasperate. And really, we don't get out of this lifetime without having blood diseases, which is cancer and dementia and heart failure, but you don't die of the dementia and cancer, you die of the heart failure. So what I've noticed, and there's a common denominator, is with PPCM, sometimes cancer appears only due to our body all has cancer cells, but the trauma brings them up. So I had mine scraped out, but they discovered it through my BNP test.
Oh wow!
Which is a simple B type test, and it's just it's a brain natriuretic peptide test, but it will determine a lot of things. Like, for example, peripartum cardiomyopathy is developed because the blood and the fluid is crushing the heart. It's not a heart issue. The heart is caused by the fluid. It's a fluid issue. It's a blood issue. We all have fluid and blood. So even my 5-year-old, I have a BNP and an EKG for him because I want to know his BNP number. So I can maybe, if something was to happen, there is child cancer, there's child heart failure, there's, just to know where he's at as a PPCM baby who's now 5.
Yeah.
So it couldn't hurt to follow up on your BNP number.
Yeah.
And your baby's BNP number.
Yeah.
And see if maybe in the medical records, when they diagnosed you PPCM, if they provided you a BNP number, BNP test, call them and ask them and say, I'd like to know my number. It's important.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't know that. That's good to know.
Yeah, absolutely. Because your EF percent was quite low.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, yours was 10%, right?
Oh, no, 23.
23. I was the other 23%. That's still very low. So your BNP must have been high.
Mm.
And usually to lower it, they do the magnesium drip or they put you on.
I did go on magnesium.
Okay, so they did do a BNP.
They must have done then, yeah.
Yeah,
Find
out what that number is and then let me know. Message me.
Yeah, hello.
I'm curious. I always like to know, a lot. Oops. Bloopers. He stayed home from school today.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. Oh, he's 5.
Oh.
Actually, I have been. It's been a long day of interviewing. He's been a very good boy.
Oh, good lad.
But yeah, I do appreciate your time and that you spending it with me, and yeah, just follow up with me. I'd love to hear, your update on
definitely
how your health is and all of that, and your BNP number, and see how you can compare it. And maybe we'll touch base and see, what you were then to what you are today. Yeah,
definitely. I'll find out. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much. And for sharing your story with me and, and thinking about, other women. My heart,
definitely.
actually, I don't know if this happens to you, but I get like choked up, like not crying, but like in my throat. Do you get that a lot?
Yeah, definitely.
That's like a side effect?
Maybe, yeah, it might be. It does always get me. Yeah.
Yeah, it really gets me sometimes. And it just did just now. It's like, so anyway, I always have to say, not COVID, heart failure.
It's like the new greeting.
Right. Exactly. Well, all my love to you and your family, and we'll
you
keep
too.
in touch. All right.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us and listening to the PPCM Fund podcast. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. PPCM's Painful Truth is made possible through the generous support of donors like you. Help us spread the awareness by donating at ppcmfund.com or click the link below to become a member through Ko-fi. Also, remember to join us every Monday and Friday for Mom Day Fitness. Have a great day.